The wind screamed through the pines as 12-year-old Noah gripped his dog's tattered leash. The lodge ahead loomed like a beacon in the deepening twilight, its aged timbers offering refuge from the brewing storm. Fatigue pressed hard on his young frame after 3 days of trekking through the rugged highlands. Inside, motes of dust swirled in the dim glow, seeping through filthy panes. A crude wooden table sat upended. Deep claw marks marred the timber walls. Noah's fingers brushed one gash, 4 wide, parallel grooves too big for any domestic animal. His dog, Scout, whined, snout quivering at an unseen scent. Noah's gut churned as he spotted coarse, black fur snagged in the door jamb. What beast called this place home? And how soon would it return to find intruders in its lair? The brass compass weighed heavy in Noah's hand as he turned it slowly, the needle trembling before pointing north. His father's voice rang in his mind. As long as you carry this, you'll always find your way. Now, curled up in the eerie lodge with Scout nestled close, those words felt like a bitter jest. Cresthaven Hamlet was the only home Noah had known. Tucked in a gorge between jagged peaks, it was a tight-knit place where everyone knew your name and your story. 20 families, all told, living in sync with the Highlands' brutal cadence. His father, Caleb, had been the hamlet's go-to tracker, guiding supply runs to the lowlands market twice a season. His mother, Lila, nurtured the hamlet's shared garden, teasing crops from the rocky soil. Scout yipped softly, nudging Noah's hand. The scruffy terrier had been his shadow since he was 7, found shivering in a late fall blizzard. He's got the Highlands in his bones, his father had said. Just like you. Noah ruffled the dog's matted fur, recalling summer days wandering the glades and creeks near the hamlet. He'd learned to trap fish in those waters, to spot safe berries from the ones that'd double you over. His father's teachings were blunt, practical. The Highlands don't care if you're worn out or spooked. You'd better know how to fend for yourself. Winter nights were spent by the fire in their cozy lodge, his mother showing him how to weave while his father whittled detailed figures from cedar. The hamlet folk would gather in the meeting hall for song nights. Old Mrs. Carver on her banjo, Mr. Tobin keeping rhythm on a battered guitar. But trouble had been brewing even before calamity hit. Last fall, when snow fell weeks early, Noah overheard hushed talks between his parents when they thought he was asleep. The hamlet elders met more often, their faces grim as they studied almanacs and weather logs. The climate's shifting, he'd heard his father tell his mother. The Highlands aren't what they used to be. Noah had been helping Mr. Brandt inspect the rock slide barriers when they noticed fractures in the ice high above the hamlet. They'd raced back to raise the alarm, but his father seemed to know it was too late. That night, Caleb pressed the compass into Noah's hand. "Keep this close," he'd said, his gaze fierce. "And don't forget what I've taught you about surviving out there." Noah hadn't grasped it then. Why would he need to survive when they had their warm lodge, their hamlet? Now, clutching the compass in the shadows, he understood all too well. A sharp sound outside snapped him back to the moment. Scout's ears twitched, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Noah froze, straining to listen. "Just the wind," he whispered to himself. "Just the wind in the pines." But as Scout's growl grew sharper, Noah wasn't so certain. He slipped the compass back into his pocket, its heft a meager shield against rising fear. The hamlet was gone. His parents were gone. All he had left was Scout, the compass, and the survival know-how his father had ingrained in him since he could toddle. "We'll get through this," Noah murmured to Scout, the words ringing empty even to himself. "Just one night, then we'll figure out what's next." But as another noise echoed outside, something heavy crashing through the brush, Noah wondered if they'd see morning at all. He clutched the compass tighter in his pocket, praying its needle could guide him to safety, to hope. Yet no path could take him back to what was gone, only forward into a world closing in with danger. Noah pulled a creased photo from his pocket, smoothing its worn edges against his leg. 3 faces beamed back, his mother's eyes sparkling with warmth, his father's arm wrapped around them both, and Noah's own lopsided smile from last summer, before the Highlands turned on them. The first tremor hit just after dawn. Noah had been tending the morning fire when the mugs jittered on the shelves. His father, Caleb, was outside measuring the snowpack, a daily winter task. His mother, Lila, paused mid-kneading, flour dusting her hands, a frown creasing her brow. Then came a roar like 100 locomotives charging down. Avalanche! The cry tore through the hamlet, sharp with fear. Caleb burst inside, face pale beneath his stubble. "The West Ridge is coming down," he gasped. "To the shelter now." They'd barely cleared the door when a wall of white slammed the first row of lodges. The hamlet was built to withstand avalanches, with sturdy roofs and careful placement. But this was beyond anything they'd planned for. The barrier walls, steadfast for generations, shattered like kindling. The three of them ran, Scout darting ahead as neighbors fled too, some in nightclothes, children hoisted in arms. Mr. Tobin tripped in the deep snow, his wife yanking him up without pausing. The Carver boy wailed, his cries swallowed by the Highlands' thunder. The earth quaked underfoot. Noah's mother stumbled, Caleb steadying her. "Almost there," he urged, though the shelter fell miles away. Noah would never forget what came next. His father glancing back, eyes widening at something behind them. The desperate force as he shoved Noah forward. The crack in his voice as he yelled, "Run," before turning back for Lila, who'd fallen again. The sound of snapping timber as a second wave of snow hit, carrying the wreckage of the West Lodges. Scout's teeth gently clamped Noah's sleeve, pulling him toward the shelter when his legs froze. Inside the concrete bunker, he huddled with the other survivors, 11 people and 2 dogs, all that remained of Cresthaven Hamlet. For 3 days, they crouched there, stretching emergency rations, listening to the Highlands groan above. When they finally emerged, their world was buried under 20 feet of snow and debris, only a few roof peaks poking through. The search began at once, but hope dwindled hourly. On the 4th day, they found Caleb's body, his hands still gripping Lila's wrist, as if he'd fought to save her until the end. That night, as the survivors planned evacuation, Noah slipped away. He couldn't bear the sympathetic glances or offers to take him in. His uncle lived in a hamlet 2 ridges over, but the path was impassable until spring. The group planned to trek to the lowlands town, but Noah couldn't stomach leaving the Highlands, the only home he'd known, where his parents now rested beneath the snow. So, as the others slept, drained by sorrow and toil, he packed his father's old rucksack, dried fish, flint, spare gloves, the photo, and the compass, the essentials Caleb had taught him to value. With Scout beside him, he stepped into the wilderness as the first golden light brushed the peaks. 3 days later, staring at the photo in the lodge's dim light, Noah wondered if he'd made a grave error. The Highlands, once a place his father taught him to revere, now felt like an enemy. He tucked the photo away as Scout lifted his head, ears pricked at a sound outside. The wind had quieted, leaving a chilling stillness, broken only by the occasional groan of the lodge's beams. Something was out there, drawing closer. The rough map Noah had scribbled on a torn piece of parchment shook in his hands as a gust nearly snatched it away. He stuffed it into his coat, squinting at the unfamiliar peaks ahead. Nothing aligned with his father's old stories. 3 days of wandering had led him deep into uncharted territory. "What's the way, boy?" he asked Scout, who panted beside him on a jagged outcrop. The dog cocked his head, his brown eyes full of trust, but no answers. The first day had been the hardest, each step pulling him farther from his parents' graves, marked only by crude wooden stakes. He trudged until his legs burned, grief clouding his mind. Scout stayed close, either ahead or behind, as if shielding him from hidden dangers. That night, they'd slept in the hollow of an old cedar, Scout's warmth curled around him. Despite his exhaustion, sleep came in restless snatches, haunted by visions of crashing snow and his father's final cry. The second day brought hunger and the stark truth that his scant supplies wouldn't hold out. He'd set simple snares, as Caleb had shown him, catching one hare to cook over a small fire. The warm meal gave him strength, but reality loomed large. He was a boy alone in one of the harshest places on earth. "The Highlands don't care if you're afraid," he told himself, voice wavering. "So I won't be." But he was especially after yesterday's encounter with the cougar. They'd been tracking a deer path when Scout stiffened for bristling. The dog's low growl sent a chill through Noah. Then he saw it, tawny fur blending with the rocky ledge above, eyes locked on them. For an endless moment, boy and beast stared. Noah recalled his father's words, "Stand tall. Don't run. Don't turn away." His shaking body obeyed, arms spread wide as he backed off slowly, Scout positioned between him and the cat, teeth flashing. Whether it was Scout's defiance or the cougar's lack of hunger, it finally slunk off, vanishing over the ridge with a twitch of its tail. Noah had bolted then, fear fueling his weary legs, not stopping until a cramp forced him to collapse, gasping. Now, on the third day, the weather turned hostile. Dark clouds massed on the horizon, bringing a biting wind that sliced through his thick coat. The temperature plummeted, and with it, Noah's hope of reaching his uncle's hamlet. "We need shelter before that storm hits," he told Scout, who yipped in agreement. They descended from the outcrop toward a thick forest that might shield them from the elements. The first heavy raindrops fell as they reached the tree-line, soon turning to stinging sleet that pricked Noah's face. His numb fingers wrestled with the map, trying to mark their rough position by the peaks still visible in the fading light, but the landmarks were foreign. This was beyond anywhere he'd gone, even with Caleb. The sleet became snow as night closed in, flakes dancing in dizzying spirals that blurred his sense of direction. Scout pressed tight against him, as if sensing, like Noah, that they were in deep trouble. "Just a bit farther," Noah urged, though he had no clue where they were bound. "We'll find a place to ride out the storm." As if answering a silent plea, the trees parted, revealing a small glade. There, half hidden among the firs, stood the shadowy shape of a structure, a lodge, its dark windows staring through the whirling snow. "Look, Scout," Noah whispered, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "Someone's out here after all." But as they drew closer, boots crunching in the fresh snow, the lodge's eerie stillness made him hesitate. No smoke curled from a chimney. No glow flickered inside. Scout sniffed the air and let out a low growl. A rusted axe head glinted faintly in Noah's flashlight beam, its handle long decayed. He set it carefully by the door, where he could grab it if needed. The axe proved someone human had once been here. "Hello," Noah called, his voice thin in the lodge's stale air. Silence answered. After a moment's pause, Scout at his side, Noah summoned the courage to push open the door. It creaked inward, revealing a single room, roughly 15 feet square. A stone hearth dominated one wall, opposite a rough bunk carved into the log frame. A crude table lay upended in the center, not merely toppled but flung with force, sending a shiver down Noah's spine. The storm outside roared louder, wind screaming through the trees and shaking the lodge's lone window. Snow sifted through cracks in the walls, piling on the floorboards. Despite the chill, Noah caught a faint, feral scent, sharp and wild, like the time Caleb had dealt with a bear preying on Hamlet's goats. "No one's been here in ages," Noah murmured to Scout, who stayed tense, ears forward, nose twitching. "At least, no one human," he added, eyeing deep scratches in the doorframe. The wind howled fiercer, as if trying to rip the lodge apart. With the temperature dropping and night closing in, Noah knew they had no choice but to stay until dawn. Safer here than out there, he told himself, as much for Scout's sake as his own. "Let's get a fire going." The hearth held old ashes, and a small pile of dusty but dry logs sat nearby. Using Caleb's flint and steel, Noah nursed a spark into a flame, feeding it until it took hold of the larger wood. The fire's golden glow pushed back the darkness, revealing more of their refuge. The lodge had been abandoned in a hurry. Beyond the upturned table and scattered logs, Noah found a battered tin pot, still usable, and a jar of what might have been jam, now a rancid sludge. No clothes, no personal belongings. Whoever lived here had taken those. But as the fire grew, its light creeping into the shadows, Noah saw something else, claw marks. Not just the scratches on the doorframe, but long, deliberate gouges in the walls, the table legs, even the hearthstone edge. Some were old, smoothed by time. Others were fresh, the wood still raw where it had splintered. Noah's mouth went dry. "Scout," he whispered, "this isn't a person's place anymore." The dog whined, pressing closer. Despite Noah's growing dread, exhaustion weighed heavy. 3 days of trekking rough terrain, the crushing grief of his loss, and the stark reality of being 12 and alone, save for Scout, hit him hard. He dragged a mattress, a coarse sack stuffed with straw and pine needles, from the bunk to the floor by the fire, positioning it so his back was to the wall, with a clear view of the door and window. Using his small knife, he propped the overturned table against the door, forming a rough barricade to warn them if anything tried to get in. Just until dawn, Noah told Scout, who lay with his head on his paws, eyes glinting in the firelight, locked on the door. "Then we'll sort out where we are and head for Uncle Ben's." Noah didn't fully trust his own words. The storm showed no sign of easing, and even if it did, he wasn't certain which way to go. The map he'd sketched was a sodden mess, its charcoal lines smeared into uselessness. As he settled beside Scout, one hand on the dog's back, he felt something solid under the thin mattress. Reaching beneath, his fingers grasped a smooth wooden handle. The axe head he'd found outside had a match. This handle, worn glossy by years of use, was sturdy ash, its blade gone, but the metal collar that once held it still intact. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Holding the handle close, Noah gave in to sleep, the fire snapping beside him, Scout keeping watch. The claw marks on the lodge wall seemed to widen in the flickering light. 4 deep, parallel gouges, each nearly an inch deep, spaced as if carved by one massive swipe. Noah ran his fingers over the jagged edges, comparing them to his spread hand. His palm barely spanned half the gap between the outermost marks. "That's no lynx," he whispered to Scout, who lay alert by the fire, ears twitching at every creak and moan of the lodge as the storm pummeled it. Not even a cougar. The wind screamed down the chimney, scattering sparks across the hearth. Outside, the blizzard had worsened, turning the forest into a shrieking white abyss. Noah added another log to the fire, thankful for the small pile of dry wood. Without it, they'd be shivering in the dark. Sleep wouldn't come. Each time his eyes grew heavy, a new noise from beyond the walls snapped him awake. A branch scraping the roof, the distant snap of a snow-heavy tree collapsing. Once a long, low moan that might have been the wind, but sounded too much like something living. Scout heard it too, his fur bristling, a growl rising in his throat. "It's nothing, boy," Noah said, as much to himself as to the dog. "Just the storm." But as midnight neared, marked by the small clock in Noah's pack, the sounds shifted. Something moved outside. Not the wild chaos of the blizzard, but heavy, deliberate steps crunching in the snow-packed glade. Scout sprang up, teeth bared, his growl rising to a sharp, fearful pitch. "Quiet," Noah hissed, grabbing the axe handle. Heart hammering, he pressed against the wall, eyes glued to the door where his makeshift barricade held firm. The steps circled the lodge, once, twice, 3 times, then stopped. Silence fell, so absolute Noah heard his own pulse. A sudden thud against the lodge's back wall made him flinch. Another followed, heavier, as if something massive was testing the structure. The logs groaned, but didn't give. A gust blew snow through a cracked window pane, dusting the floor. In the stillness that followed, Noah heard sniffing, deep, forceful breaths just outside the glass. Scout's nerve broke. He barked, once, twice, the sound shattering the quiet. The sniffing cut off. Then came a noise that turned Noah's blood to ice. A deep, rumbling growl that shook the lodge's very timbers. No wolf made that sound. Nothing he'd ever heard in the Highlands did. "Bear," he breathed, the word hitting like a blow. The creature answered with a roar that seemed to rattle the foundation stones. Noah clapped his hands over his ears, mind racing. Bears were supposed to sleep through winter. Caleb had always said so. Unless the erratic weather had thrown off their usual cycles, or this was its den and the storm had forced it back to shelter now occupied by intruders. For nearly an hour, the tense standoff dragged on. The bear circled, sniffed, occasionally shoved against the walls or door, while Noah gripped his flimsy axe handle and Scout wavered between growling and quivering. Eventually, the noises faded, the bear either losing interest or biding its time. As the night wore on, exhaustion overtook Noah. Despite his fear, his eyelids drooped, his hold on the handle slackening. Just before sleep claimed him, a strange thought surfaced. He and the bear weren't so different. Both were displaced, seeking refuge from a storm. The idea chased him into fitful dreams of running through endless snow, a massive presence at his heels, its hot breath grazing his neck, its roar swallowing the world. He jolted awake, disoriented. The fire had dwindled to embers, cloaking the lodge in shadow. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving a heavy silence. Scout stood tense by the window, a low whine in his throat. Dawn's faint light seeped through the glass, revealing what held the dog's gaze. A single, massive paw print pressed into the snow outside, stark as a brand. Beside it, barely visible in the dim light, was something that made Noah's heart lurch. A tuft of coarse, black fur snagged on a nail jutting from the window frame. The bear had been inches away, separated only by fragile glass, and something told Noah it would return. The brittle paper crinkled in Noah's hands as he unfolded it, brushing off dust. Only the top half remained readable, the rest torn or rotted by time and damp. Bold letters declared notice across the top, with the Forest Service seal still clear in the corner. Warning: increased bear activity reported in this area. Multiple sightings of adult female with, the rest was gone. Noah didn't need more. He'd found a notice tucked behind a loose plank near the hearth while searching for firewood in the pale morning light. "We're in bear country, Scout," he said softly, the dog's attentive eyes fixed on him. Not just any bear, a mother with cubs. The realization made their plight far graver. Caleb had always warned that nothing in the highlands was more volatile or fierce than a mother bear guarding her young. With daylight illuminating the lodge, Noah inspected it more closely. What he'd mistaken for random chaos in the dark now showed a chilling pattern. The upturned furniture, the scattered debris, it wasn't mere neglect. This was a home repurposed for a new occupant. In one corner, he found a shallow dip in the dirt floor, roughly circular, lined with dried grass and pine needles. A bed, but not human-made. Nearby, scattered bones, stripped clean but fresh, hinted at recent kills. "This isn't just a bear's territory," Noah said, dread rising. "This is its den." The storm had cleared, leaving a vivid blue sky and a snow-draped landscape. Through the window, Noah saw an unbroken white expanse, pierced only by dark fir trunks and a single line of massive paw prints trailing away from the lodge. "It's gone for now," he told Scout, who stayed subdued, sticking close. "But it'll be back. This is its home." The path forward was obvious. They had to leave, put as much distance as possible between themselves and this place before the bear returned. Uncertainty clawed at Noah. The snow blanketed the ground, obscuring paths and markers. He had no clear sense of which way led to safety, and aimless wandering could be fatal in these highlands. Caleb's voice echoed in his mind. "When you're lost or unsure, shelter comes first. Better to hunker down somewhere secure than walk yourself into a grave." But this lodge was anything but secure. Noah checked his supplies. The meager food from the hamlet was nearly gone. Just a few strips of smoked fish and a handful of dried berries left. His canteen's water had sustained them, but he'd need to refill it soon, maybe by melting snow if no stream appeared. "We need more to go on before we move," he said aloud to Scout, as he often did when puzzling through problems. "We need to know where we are, where to head." An idea sparked. Maybe the lodge held something useful, a map, a tool, anything left by its original owner. With fresh determination, he searched every corner. Under the bunk, he found rusted tins, their labels long decayed. In a corner cabinet, moldy blankets and a shattered lantern. Nothing helpful. Then, inspecting the stone hearth, he noticed an oddity. One rock near the base was nearly square, with faint carvings. Kneeling, Noah brushed away ash to reveal initials. HB, and a date from nearly 50 years ago. Below, barely legible, was an arrow pointing east beside the word outpost or haven. A direction. Noah's breath caught, excitement briefly drowning his fear. "Someone left us a clue," he said, glancing at Caleb's compass to confirm east. Through the window, a ridge loomed in that direction, maybe a mile off. "That's our path," he told Scout, who gave a cautious tail wag, responding to Noah's brighter tone. A sharp crack outside cut him off, a branch snapping under heavy weight. Boy and dog froze, eyes fixed on the barricaded door. Something moved in the trees beyond the glade. Something big. The broken radio sat in Noah's hand, its cracked screen and missing antenna spelling its uselessness. He set it down with a sigh, scanning the ruins of what was once a Forest Service outpost. After the sound outside the lodge faded, a false alarm, likely snow sliding off a branch, Noah decided they couldn't stay. Following the carved arrow, he and Scout had headed east through deep snow, Noah forging a path while Scout trailed behind. The trek was grueling, snow reaching his thighs at times, but the clear sky held, and Caleb's compass kept them on course toward the distant ridge. After nearly 2 hours of punishing hiking, they'd crested a rise to find this crumbling structure among ancient firs. Little remained, a single room, half its roof collapsed, with a faded Forest Service emblem on the weathered door. Time and the Highlands' harsh elements had stripped most of its contents. Still, Noah searched, clinging to hope for something useful. The radio, found in a metal box that shielded it from the worst decay, had sparked a moment of excitement. A link to the outside, a chance to call for help. Reality snuffed that out. Even if it worked, who would he contact? What could he say? "I'm lost in the Highlands with a bear on my trail." Without coordinates or landmarks, no one could find him. "At least we know people come through here sometimes," Noah told Scout, who was sniffing the outpost perimeter. Scout's nose skimmed the ground, sniffing for a trail that might lead somewhere. Suddenly, he froze, ears pricked, staring beyond the trees. Noah stiffened, hand instinctively reaching for the knife at his belt. But Scout's stance was curious, not fearful. Following the dog's gaze, Noah caught a flicker of movement near a gap in the tree line. Something small and swift, not a bear. "Stay," he whispered, creeping toward the spot. Another glimpse, the white flash of a snow hare vanishing into the brush. Noah's lips curved into his first real smile since leaving the hamlet. Game meant food, a chance to stretch his dwindling supplies. Back at the outpost, he gathered what he could salvage: a slightly dented tin mug, a partial roll of duct tape, and a faded map pinned to the wall. The map was mostly illegible, ruined by water, but one corner showed a faint outline of a lake or pond with a small square marker beside it. Perhaps another structure, a destination. As Noah packed these finds, he noticed something else, a disturbance in the vegetation around the outpost. Not just winter decay, but a pattern of snapped branches and crushed undergrowth forming a faint corridor into the forest. A trail, overgrown but real. "Look, Scout," he said, excitement edging his voice. "This could lead somewhere." The dog tilted his head, as if grasping the find's significance. Before moving on, Noah gathered more firewood. If they found no shelter by nightfall, they'd need a camp, and the cold would bite hard after sunset. While collecting branches near the clearing's edge, he spotted something odd on the tree trunks. Long, vertical scratches scored into the bark of several firs, too high for a small animal, too intentional for random damage. Bare marks, territorial. A chill unrelated to the cold gripped Noah. Closer inspection revealed some marks were fresh, the inner bark still pale and sappy despite the frost. "Recent," he muttered, scanning the silent forest. Too recent. From somewhere distant came a faint, unmistakable sound. A low, rumbling growl carried on the still air. Scout whined, pressing against Noah's leg. "I know, boy," Noah whispered, shouldering his pack with shaky hands. "We got to move." They followed the faint trail, Noah checking the compass to hold their eastward course. The afternoon sun cast long shadows, a reminder of dwindling daylight. They needed real shelter before dark. Behind them, barely audible but unmistakable, came the sound of heavy steps crunching through snow, deliberate, unhurried, but steady, tracking them. A tuft of coarse, dark fur stuck to Noah's fingers as he examined it in the fading light, its musky scent wrinkling Scout's nose. Bear fur, and not just in one spot, but scattered throughout the back of the lodge they'd returned to. The trail from the outpost had led them in a wide loop, fading under fresh snow. With daylight fading and no new shelter in sight, Noah had made the tough call to backtrack to the lodge. Better a known risk than freezing out here, he told Scout as they neared the clearing again. We'll fortify better this time and leave at first light, heading east. The lodge seemed untouched on their return, the bear apparently absent during their trek. But as Noah explored the structure more thoroughly, he found a small door in the back corner he'd missed before. A low opening led to what must have been a storage nook, but what Noah found inside chilled him to the core. The small space, barely a closet, had been turned into a den. Pine branches, grass, and fur lined the floor, forming a nest. But it was the other contents that told the grim truth. A pile of half-eaten prey, scattered bones, and, most alarming, impressions in the bedding that suggested not one bear, but several cubs. A mother and cubs. Noah breathed, the realization hitting like a blow. The Torn Ranger notice now made grim sense. This wasn't just a bear's territory. It was a mother bear's nursery, perhaps the deadliest place he could be. Scout growled low, hackles up, standing at the den's doorway, unwilling to step inside. The stench overwhelmed even Noah's human nose. The musky reek of bear, the sharp tang of old blood, the earthy scent of soil and plants dragged in. "We gotta go," Noah said, backing away. "Right now, we'll take our chances out there." But a glance through the lodge's lone window froze him. The sun had nearly set, the forest sinking into deep blue shadows. Worse, thick snowflakes were falling again, hinting at another storm. Leaving now, with no destination and night closing in, would be fatal. They were trapped, forced to spend another night in a place claimed by one of the Highlands' fiercest predators. Moving quickly, Noah fortified their position. He dragged the heavy bunk frame against the main door, jamming it tight. The small window was too narrow for a bear to enter, but still vulnerable. He covered it with salvaged planks, hammering them in place with stones. The den's entrance posed the biggest threat. No door, nothing to seal it. Noah's eyes landed on the overturned table. It could just fit the opening if tilted sideways. "Help me, Scout," he said, though the dog could only watch as Noah wrestled the heavy furniture into place across the den's entrance. It wouldn't stop a determined bear, but it might slow one down, give them a warning. Night fell as Noah finished. He built a small fire, just enough for faint light and warmth, avoiding heavy smoke that might signal their presence. Their last scraps of food, a single strip of smoked fish, he shared with Scout, washing it down with melted snow. One night, he promised Scout, huddled near the fire, hand on his knife. "Just one more, then we're gone, storm or not." The wind surged outside, pelting snow against the walls like hissing sand. Each gust made the lodge creak and settle, every sound jolting them. Then came a noise not from wind, snow, or shifting wood, a huffing grunt, followed by the high-pitched whines of young animals. They were back right outside. Scout's growl erupted, a deep warning from his chest. Noah gently clamped his hand over the dog's muzzle. "Quiet," he whispered, heart pounding so hard he feared it echoed across the room. Not a sound. The makeshift spear felt rough in Noah's grip, its weight both comforting and terrifying. He'd crafted it from a broken table leg, using his pocket knife to carve a crude point, then hardening it in the fire's embers as Caleb had taught him. "It won't kill a bear," his father's voice seemed to murmur in his mind, "but it might buy you a second, and sometimes that's enough." Outside, the storm raged harder, snow whipping past the window in a horizontal blur. The storm was now the least of their worries. Out in the swirling white darkness, the bear and her cubs prowled around their former den, aware of the intruders inside. Noah caught fleeting glimpses of movement. A massive shadow gliding past the window, the crunch of heavy paws in the snow. Once, the lodge trembled as something huge brushed against the outer wall. Scout tensed beside him, a steady growl rumbling despite Noah's efforts to hush him. "She knows we're here," Noah whispered, more to himself than Scout. "And she wants us out." Part of him understood her claim. This was her den, and they were the trespassers. But the primal drive to survive cared nothing for her rights. They were locked in a deadly stalemate, neither side yielding, neither able to oust the other. For now, Noah's barriers held. The bunk jammed against the door, the planks nailed over the window, the table blocking the den's entrance. But how long would they last? As the night deepened and the storm's rage grew, Noah's thoughts turned grim. What if the bear waited them out? Their food was gone, and the firewood would last another day at best. Even if they held out, how could they escape? Opening the door would leave them exposed, defenseless. "We need a plan," he told Scout, the dog's warmth against his side his only solace. "We can't just wait to die." Caleb's survival lessons hadn't covered being trapped in a bear's den in winter, but core principles still applied. Assess your resources, know your surroundings, find your enemy's weaknesses. Resources were scarce. The spear, his knife, an almost empty pack, the clothes he wore. The environment was hostile, a raging blizzard outside, temperatures diving with the night. As for the bear's weaknesses, Noah thought hard. Bears leaned heavily on scent. Their eyesight was fair, but not their main sense. Their hearing outmatched a human's, but could be thrown off by multiple sounds. A desperate plan took shape for morning, assuming they survived the night. He'd need a diversion, something to lure the bear away long enough for them to flee in the opposite direction. Fire, maybe, or noise, perhaps both. The ranger outpost they'd found earlier, if they could reach it again, they might follow that faint trail to safety. "First light," he whispered to Scout, who tilted his head as if trying to grasp the words. "That's when we move." A fierce gust shook the lodge, and for a moment, Noah thought he heard wood splintering. He held his breath, listening, spear gripped in sweating hands, but no further breach came. Hours crawled by in tense watchfulness. Noah fought sleep, knowing it could mean death if the bear broke in. Twice, he jolted awake from brief lapses, heart pounding at the disorientation. "Mom," he whispered into the dark, grief surging. "Dad, I'm scared." The words, spoken aloud in the silent lodge, brought tears. Despite his efforts to channel Caleb's wisdom, he was still just a 12-year-old, lost in the wild, alone but for his loyal dog, facing a threat that would daunt even seasoned adults. Scout sensed his pain, inching closer to lick the tears from his face. The simple act nearly broke Noah, but he forced himself to breathe deeply, steadying himself. "We'll make it," he vowed to Scout, his voice firmer now. "We'll get out tomorrow, find Uncle Ben's," Noah told Scout. "You'll have a warm bed and all the food you want." A sudden hush fell outside, the wind pausing. In that brief quiet, Noah heard a sound that froze his blood, the soft whimpering of bear cubs, answered by their mother's low rumble. Too close. Noah gripped his spear, waiting for dawn. A crash of breaking glass shattered the night's tense calm. Noah snapped awake, disoriented for a heartbeat before reality hit. The window. Something had smashed it. A massive paw, claws glinting, pulled back from the jagged hole, ripping away several of Noah's nailed planks. Snow and icy air poured in, along with a deep, huffing breath, the bear, scenting them directly now. Scout erupted into wild barking, ignoring Noah's earlier pleas for silence, planting himself between the boy and the broken window. The bear answered with a roar that shook the lodge's walls, its huge head filling the window frame as it tested the narrow opening. "Back, Scout!" Noah yelled, yanking the dog by his collar. If the bear got even one paw through, it could easily snag the frantic dog. Noah's mind raced. The window was too small for the adult bear to enter. A small mercy, but the broken glass created a direct channel for scent and sound. Any hope of hiding until morning was gone. Worse, the freezing air would soon make the lodge unlivable. The bear's frustration grew, its jaws snapping at the remaining planks, claws raking the log walls. Each assault sent glass and splinters scattering across the floor. Amid Scout's barking and the bear's roars, Noah heard another sound that chilled him further, the high-pitched whines of cubs, anxious at their mother's agitation. A mother bear guarding cubs wouldn't back down easily. "We gotta drive her off," Noah muttered, searching desperately for anything to help. His eyes fell on the fire, now just embers in the hearth. Bears feared fire. Moving fast, Noah grabbed a smoldering log, its end glowing red. It wasn't much of a torch, but it was all he had. The bear's head reappeared at the window, jaws gaping, eyes flashing in the firelight. Noah thrust the burning log toward the hole, shouting, "Get out! Go!" The bear flinched from the flame, but didn't retreat far, instead circling to the door. Heavy thuds marked its movement, clear even over Scout's barking. A massive crash shook the lodge, the bunk frame against the door shifting but holding. Another crash came, then another. The bear was slamming its full weight against the barrier. "It's gonna break through," Noah realized, terrorizing. The door and frame were old, weathered soft by years of harsh winters. They wouldn't hold long. Each impact brought the groan of straining wood and the ping of nails loosening. Scout's barking turned frantic, the dog darting between window and door, torn between threats. In desperation, Noah scanned for anything to bolster the door. The table blocked the den's entrance. The bunk braced the door. Nothing else was heavy enough. The fire was their only hope. Grabbing another burning brand, Noah positioned himself by the door, ready to face the bear if it broke through. Noah's makeshift spear lay ready at his side, a frail defense against over 500 pounds of furious predator, but better than nothing. Another massive blow splintered the doorframe's corner. Through the widening gap, Noah glimpsed thick, dark fur, the flash of an eye, and hot breath steaming in the icy air. "Scout, quiet," he ordered, forcing a confidence he didn't feel. The dog, sensing the stakes, stopped barking, taking position beside Noah with a steady, low growl. The next crash sent splinters flying as a hinge tore half free. One more hit like that, and they'd face the bear head-on. Time seemed to crawl as Noah raised the burning brand, Caleb's words ringing in his mind. "Face a predator, stand tall. Make noise. Don't run." Most times, they don't want to fight any more than you do. But this wasn't most times. This was a mother bear fighting for her den, her cubs. Normal rules didn't apply. The final blow never landed. The pressure on the door stopped. Silence fell, broken only by Scout's growling. Then, a new sound. The mother bear's low, huffing call to her cubs, followed by the crunch of snow as she moved away. Relief surged through Noah, but he didn't trust it. The bear hadn't surrendered. She'd just shifted strategy, and the night was far from over. The hunting knife glinted in the dim dawn light, filtering through the broken window. Noah turned it in his hands, feeling its familiar weight. Caleb had given it to him for his 12th birthday 3 months ago. "Not a toy," he'd said solemnly. "A tool. Someday it might save your life." That day had come too soon. The night had been a series of tense standoffs. After the initial attack, the bear had circled the lodge, probing for weak points but never launching a full assault. Noah had kept watch by the door, torch in hand, every sound amplified by his heightened senses. Neither he nor Scout had slept. Now, as dawn broke, Noah saw their narrow window. The bear's movements had grown sporadic over the last hour. Maybe she'd gone to tend her cubs or hunt. Whatever the reason, this was their shot to escape. "We need a plan, Scout," he murmured, the dog's sharp eyes on him. "And I think I've got one." Caleb had taught him that bears, despite their strength, followed predictable patterns, routine paths, drawn to food, guided by their keen sense of smell. Noah reached into his pack for the last item he'd held on to, a small tin of Caleb's pipe tobacco. Its sharp scent filled the lodge as he opened it, making Scout sneeze. "Sorry, boy," Noah said, "but this might save us." Bears' sensitive noses could be overwhelmed or confused by strong odors. The tobacco, paired with fire, could mask their scent enough to cover their escape. Noah mapped out his plan. First, create a smoky fire with the tobacco to obscure their scent. Second, make noise in one direction to distract the bear. Third, slip out the window and flee the opposite way. Simple in theory, terrifying to execute. He set to work, piling the remaining firewood in the lodge's center, not the hearth, and sprinkling tobacco over it. He'd light it at the last moment, but everything had to be ready. Next, he tore strips from the moldy blanket found under the bunk, wrapping them around his spears and to make a torch that would burn longer than a bare branch. The final piece, the noise diversion, was the riskiest. Noah needed something to keep making noise after they fled, pulling the bear's attention from their escape. His eyes landed on the dented tin mug he'd found earlier. If he could rig it to fall repeatedly, it might work. Moving fast, Noah fashioned a crude pulley with the last blanket strips. He tied the mug to one end, looped the strip over a ceiling beam, and secured the other end to a piece of firewood balanced on the table blocking the den's entrance. When the fire burned through, the mug would crash down, then be yanked back up by a counterweight, falling again when the strip burned at a key point. It wasn't foolproof, but it could buy them vital minutes. "What do you think?" he asked Scout, who watched with anxious eyes. The dog whined softly, sensing the stakes. Noah double-checked his setup. Pack strapped tight, knife at his belt, compass in his pocket, window cleared of jagged glass for their escape. Everything was set. Now, they needed to pinpoint the bear's position. Edging to the window, Noah peered into the snowy clearing. The storm had passed, leaving a pristine, sunlit landscape. He scanned the tree line methodically for movement. Nothing. Then Scout growled, staring across the clearing. Following his gaze, Noah spotted her, a mother bear, half hidden among the firs, watching the lodge with eerie calm. Nearby, two cubs romped in the snow, oblivious to the tension. Seeing the cubs in daylight drove home the danger. They weren't just facing a territorial bear, but a mother guarding her young, the most perilous situation possible. "She's too close," Noah whispered, his confidence wavering. "We'll never cross the clearing without her seeing us." But what choice was there? The lodge was no longer safe with its broken window and battered door. Supplies were gone. Staying meant a guaranteed clash when the bear reclaimed her den. They had to try. "Okay," Noah said, taking a deep breath and kneeling beside Scout, meeting his loyal eyes. "Here's the plan." Everything hinged on timing, luck, and their bond. When I say run, we run. No barking, no stopping, just run. Scout pressed his cold nose to Noah's cheek, as if understanding. "Let's go home, boy." The massive paw print in the snow told Noah the truth. Nearly 8 inches wide, with 5 clear claw marks beyond the pad. This wasn't a black bear. It was a grizzly among the highlands' deadliest predators. From the window, Noah could now see the mother bear clearly in the morning light. She was immense, her dark brown fur tipped with silver, giving her the grizzled look of her kind. At least 6 feet long, likely over 500 pounds, she moved with fluid power, muscles rippling under thick winter fur. Her cubs, 2 of them, were smaller, maybe 40 pounds each, born last winter, still dependent on her for another year. They played in the snow while she kept her vigil, eyes fixed on the lodge that had been their den until Noah and Scout arrived. "She's protecting them," Noah whispered to Scout, who stood rigid, staring at the bear. "That's why she won't leave. Why she's so set on getting back in." A memory flickered. Caleb pointing out a half-dug hollow under a fallen tree during a hike, explaining how bears made dens. "They're denning," Caleb had explained, pointing to the hollow. "They need a safe, dry spot for birthing cubs in winter. Once they find a good den, they'll return year after year." Noah's heart sank as the truth hit. This wasn't just any shelter the bear was fighting for. It was her nursery, where her cubs were likely born, where she kept them safe through their fragile early months. No wonder she wouldn't relent. This cabin wasn't just refuge, it was her home. A pang of empathy struck Noah. Hadn't he, too, lost his home? Didn't he know the desperate need for safety? The cubs wrestled near the clearing's edge, their mother glancing their way, but never fully turning from the lodge. Their playfulness painfully echoed Noah's memories of roughhousing with Caleb, of feeling secure in his family's embrace. "We're not so different," he murmured. "Just try to survive." This didn't lessen the danger, but shifted Noah's perspective. Until now, the bear was just a threat to outwit. Now he saw her as a mother with needs he could grasp, protecting her family. This insight clarified her behavior. She wouldn't quit easily, wouldn't be long fooled by distractions, and would risk everything for her cubs. Any plan threatening them would unleash her full wrath. Noah watched one cub stray too far toward the forest's edge. The mother grunted, and the cubs scurried back. Their bond was clear, efficient, mirroring Noah's lost family. Grief tightened his chest. What would Lila do now? What would Caleb advise? The answer came sharply. Avoid confrontation at all costs. Caleb always stressed giving predators space, respecting their territory. Most attacks stemmed from surprising bears or getting between mothers and cubs. Noah and Scout were already in the worst spot, between a mother and her den. Their only hope was to slip away without triggering her instincts. Noah tweaked his plan. The tobacco-laced fire and noise diversion were still key, but their escape had to avoid the cubs' position. The mother stood between the lodge and her cubs, so their best route was the opposite direction, deeper into the forest, away from the earlier trail. Direction didn't matter now, distance did. They needed to get far from the bear family, fast. Change of plan, Noah whispered to Scout, who tilted his head, alert. "We're not going east. We're going away from her." Scout's eyes flicked between Noah and the bears, as if understanding. With renewed focus, Noah finalized preparations. The tobacco fire, the noise trap, now with a clear path in mind and the stakes of perfect timing. One wrong move, a sound or step at the wrong moment, could turn their escape into a deadly chase. Bears could hit 35 miles per hour in short bursts. Their only edge was the mother's reluctance to leave her cubs unguarded. Noah took a steadying breath. "Like Caleb taught us," he told Scout. "Calm, deliberate. No sudden moves." Outside, a cub stood on hind legs, swatting a low pine branch, sending snow cascading. For a moment, the mother's gaze shifted to her playful cub. Noah's hand closed around the matches in his pocket. It was time. The shredded pack hung from a broken branch, a tattered signal of their panicked flight. Noah reached for it desperately, but it was ruined, torn nearly in two, most of his supplies lost in the snow below. He clung to the pine's rough bark, breath ragged, legs shaking from the frantic climb. 20 feet below, Scout huddled against the trunk, whimpering, a streak of red staining his right foreleg. Beyond him, the mother bear circled with heavy, deliberate steps, her huffing breaths steaming in the cold air. The escape had gone horribly wrong. It had started well. Noah lit the tobacco-laced fire in the lodge's center, filling it with acrid smoke. He triggered the noise trap, the tin mug clattering repeatedly. With Scout pressed close, he slipped through the broken window, moving swiftly but quietly away from the lodge and the cubs. For the first 100 yards, it worked. The bear's focus stayed on the lodge, her massive frame tense, but still as she sniffed the smoke curling from the window and the odd clanging inside. Then it all unraveled. A gust of wind shifted, carrying their scent straight to her. Her demeanor changed instantly, head swinging toward them, nostrils flaring. She reared up, a towering 7 feet of muscle and rage. Her roar shook the air. Noah dropped all stealth, sprinting with Scout ahead. Behind them, the bear charged, covering ground with terrifying speed. The dense forest they fled into was their only edge, its tight-packed trees slowing her. Still, she gained, crashing through brush. Noah and Scout slipped past. When her breathing grew loud enough to hear, instinct took over. Spotting a tall pine with low branches, Noah yelled, "Up, Scout! Up!" Trained since a pup to climb with him, Scout scrambled up the bark, Noah right behind. But they weren't fast enough. As Scout reached the lower branches, the bear swiped, claws grazing his leg. His yelp pierced Noah's heart. A reckless kick at the bear's muzzle, foolish but instinctive, bought Scout a moment to climb higher. Now they were trapped. The bear paced below, occasionally rearing to test the branches with her huge paws. Her cubs, trailing at a distance, watched from the clearing's edge, ensuring she wouldn't back off. Noah's pack had snagged during the climb, ripping open and spilling his gear. The precious compass fell into the snow, followed by the canteen. All he had left were his clothes, Caleb's knife at his belt, and a single energy bar in his pocket. "It's okay, boy," Noah called to Scout, forcing his voice to stay calm. "She can't get us here. But for how long?" Bears could climb when driven, and though the tree's trunk might be too slim for her bulk, Noah wasn't sure. Even if she couldn't reach them, she could outweight them. The temperature was dropping, and without supplies, the cold would be as deadly as her claws. Scout whined, shifting on a branch, favoring his injured leg. The wound looked shallow, more a scrape than a deep cut, but in these conditions, any injury was a risk. "We'll be okay," Noah said, as much to reassure himself as Scout. "She'll give up eventually." But the mother bear showed no sign of relenting, circling the tree with calculated steps, pawing the soil as if testing whether she could uproot it. She occasionally reared up, stretching toward the lowest branches but stopping short of where Scout perched. The afternoon sun dipped behind the peaks, shadows stretching across the snow. Night would bring brutal cold, especially in the exposed branches. Without shelter or fire, they wouldn't survive until dawn. Noah pushed back panic, forcing himself to think. Caleb's voice rang in his head. "When you're out of options, look again. There's always something you missed." From his perch, he scanned the forest, endless and uniform. Then, maybe half a mile off, he spotted it, a faint wisp of smoke rising above the trees. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant people. Hope sparked. Someone out there might have a radio, a way to call for help, or at least a secure shelter safe from bears. But first, they had to escape this tree and the bear below. Noah glanced at the darkening sky, calculating. Bears had sharp daytime vision, but leaned on smell and hearing at night. If they waited for full dark and created a diversion, they might slip away. A risky plan formed, desperate but better than freezing in the branches. "Just a bit longer," he told Scout, who looked up with trusting eyes. "Night's coming, then we move." Below, the bear settled on her haunches, her patience matching their plight. The waiting game was on. A lightning-struck tree stood like a charred monument against the roiling sky, its splintered trunk smoking despite the driving rain. Noah stared at it in awe and relief, the thunder's crash still reverberating through the highlands. He'd never been so grateful for a storm. For hours, they'd been trapped in the pine, the mother bear holding her vigil below as night fell. The cold had deepened, numbing Noah's fingers and toes, his thin coat useless against the wind. Scout huddled on his branch, whining softly from pain or cold, but staying quiet enough not to provoke the bear further. Noah had banked on darkness for their escape, but the storm proved far more effective. It rolled in after midnight with startling ferocity. The first lightning strike hit miles away, its distant rumble making the bear lift her head, alert. Her cubs, settled at the forest's edge, whimpered nervously. The second strike lit the clearing in stark blue-white. By the third, splitting a dead pine just 50 yards away, the bear's priorities shifted. With urgent grunts, she called her cubs and led them swiftly from the clearing, fleeing a threat from the sky no amount of guarding could counter. Nature had delivered what Noah's plan couldn't, a force scarier than humans, driving even the highlands' fiercest predator to seek cover. "Now's our chance," Noah whispered to Scout, his voice nearly drowned by the wind. "We go now." The descent was perilous, the bark slick with rain, Noah's numb fingers struggling for grip. Scout fared better despite his injured leg, his claws finding purchase Noah couldn't. When they reached the ground, both were drenched and shivering, but free. Noah oriented himself toward the faint smoke he'd seen earlier, though it was invisible now in the storm's darkness. Using lightning flashes to navigate, they stumbled forward, desperate to distance themselves from the bear family's territory. An hour into their frantic trek, they reached a swollen stream fed by rainwater. Noah knelt, cupping icy water in his hands to drink. Scout lapped eagerly, then let Noah check his wounded leg in a lightning flash. The gash, about 3 inches long, was shallow and had mostly stopped bleeding, but any wound was a risk here. Infection could take hold fast. We need to clean this properly, Noah told Scout, tearing a strip from his shirt for a makeshift bandage. He soaked it in the stream and wrapped it snugly around Scout's leg, careful not to cut circulation. Rain fell in torrents, driven sideways by gusts that nearly knocked Noah over. They couldn't stay exposed long. Hypothermia loomed. "Come on," he urged Scout, standing on stiff legs. "We need shelter." They followed the stream downhill, banking on water, leading to valleys with better cover. Lightning grew sporadic as the storm shifted, dimming their path. Noah tripped over hidden rocks and roots, once nearly plunging into the stream. Scout stayed close, nudging Noah's leg to steady him. After what felt like hours, but was likely 30 minutes, the stream widened and the terrain flattened. In a faint flash, Noah spotted a rock formation. Not just boulders, but an overhang forming a shallow cave. "There!" he shouted over the wind, pointing for Scout. The dog, despite his injury, bounded ahead, sensing refuge. The overhang was shallow, about 6 feet deep, but dry and shielded from the wind, a perfect emergency shelter. Noah collapsed onto the stone floor, pulling Scout close for warmth. The dog's soaked fur still gave off heat Noah craved. "We made it, boy," he whispered, teeth chattering. Thanks to that storm. The irony struck him. The same force that buried his hamlet in an avalanche had driven off the bear, saving them. Nature was indifferent, giving and taking without care. As adrenaline faded, exhaustion hit hard. Noah fought to stay awake, knowing sleep in wet clothes was risky, but the past days, terror, cold, constant vigilance had drained him. "Just a quick rest," he told Scout, who licked his face. "Then we follow the smoke." The storm eased, thunder growing distant, rain softening to a drizzle. Noah's last thought before slipping into exhausted sleep was of the bear and her cubs. He hoped they'd found shelter too. Strange to care for a creature that nearly killed them, but they were all just fighting to survive in these highlands that belonged to no one and everyone. A bear claw rested in Noah's palm, nearly 4 inches long, curved like a blade. He'd found it tangled in Scout's bandage while changing it that morning, a stark memento of their brush with death. "Lucky she only grazed you," he told Scout, who stood patiently as Noah rewrapped the wound with another strip torn from his fraying shirt. The wound looked clean, no signs of infection, a small mercy in their ongoing struggle. Dawn brought clear skies, the storm having passed in the night. Their rock overhang had kept them dry, though Noah's clothes stayed damp and stiff. He woke shivering but alive, fueled by a renewed drive to find the smoke he'd seen yesterday. From their perch on a mountainside, Noah surveyed the terrain. The stream they'd followed wound into a wider valley where the forest thinned, and there, about 2 miles off, the smoke rose again, clearer in the morning light. "That's our goal," he told Scout, pointing. "People, maybe a ranger outpost or a hunter's cabin." Scout wagged his tail, grasping the urgency despite his injury, restless after their cramped night. They descended, following the stream toward the valley. Noah moved cautiously, knowing they were still in bear country and their last encounter might not be their last. Every few minutes, he paused, scanning and listening for anything beyond wind or water. An hour in, he spotted tracks, large paw prints in the streamside mud, too fresh, heading their way. Noah's mouth went dry. "She's ahead of us," he whispered to Scout, whose hackles rose as he sniffed the prints. The storm must have pushed her this way too. This complicated everything. The smoke promising rescue might lie in the bear's path, or worse, she could be between them and safety. Noah weighed their options. Circling wide meant abandoning the stream, their guide and water source. Waiting risked starvation and Scout's wound worsening. Pressing forward with extreme care was their best shot at avoiding another clash. Forward, Noah decided, speaking softly to Scout. But smarter this time. He crafted a walking stick from a fallen branch, both for navigating the rough ground and as a feeble defense, though he knew it was little match for 500 pounds of maternal rage. They followed the stream, Noah choosing higher ground for better visibility. Scout scouted ahead, his sharp nose and ears their early warning. Around midday, they stopped at a small waterfall where the stream spilled over a rocky ledge. Noah drank, then rested on a sun-warmed boulder. His stomach ached, a reminder of nearly a day without food since the shared fish strip in the lodge. Scout's nose twitched, and before Noah could react, the dog darted into the brush, returning with a plump ground squirrel in his jaws. "Good boy," Noah said, amazed. He knew Scout could hunt, often bringing back small game near the hamlet, but hadn't expected it with an injured leg. The squirrel was meager but vital. Using Caleb's knife, Noah dressed it and built a small, nearly smokeless fire with the driest wood. The tough, gamey meat was a feast. Hunger eased, they pressed on with fresh energy. The valley widened, the stream merging with a larger river bending toward the distant smoke. Hope grew in Noah's chest. Maybe their ordeal was nearing its end. Then Scout froze, ears pricked, a low growl rising. Following his gaze, Noah saw movement on a ridge a quarter-mile ahead. A large brown shape moving purposefully, trailed by two smaller ones. The bear family, heading straight for the smoke. No, Noah breathed, dread flooding him. If people were at the smoke source, rangers, hunters, hikers, they might not spot the bears in time. Worse, they might shoot the mother, orphaning the cubs like Noah. Despite the danger she posed, he couldn't wish that on them. But warning anyone ahead meant risking the bear's path again. Scout whined, pressing against Noah's leg, offering silent support. Noah took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and gripped his walking stick. "Come on, boy," he said softly. "We've got to hurry." The emergency flare gun felt heavy in Noah's small hand, its orange plastic warm from the ranger's grip. He stared at it, all mixed with lingering fear, hardly believing they'd survived. "You're sure it was a grizzly?" Ranger Tom asked, his weathered face etched with concern as he checked the bandage on Scout's leg. The antiseptic and gauze were a vast improvement over Noah's tattered cloth strips. "Yes, sir," Noah said firmly. "Female with 2 cubs, dark brown with silver-tipped fur. She claimed an old lodge about 5 miles northeast." Tom whistled. That'd be the old Harlan place. Abandoned for years, but still standing. Makes sense a bear would take it. The ranger outpost was everything Noah had hoped. Solid walls, a leak-free roof, a wood stove radiating warmth, and a radio linking to the outside world. The smoke that guided them came from its chimney, a beacon of safety. Their final approach had been a grueling race. After spotting the bears heading for the outpost, Noah and Scout left the stream's safety, cutting through dense forest to beat them there. The uphill terrain, strewn with logs and thick brush, taxed their exhausted bodies. They emerged into the outpost's clearing, legs shaking, only to find the bears had arrived first. The mother was sniffing the woodpile beside the cabin while her cubs nosed the perimeter. Noah's heart sank if someone was inside. The cabin door swung open, and a tall figure in a Forest Service uniform stepped out, freezing at the sight of the bears. What followed unfolded in a blur. The mother bear rose on hind legs, a towering display of protective fury. The ranger stepped back, hand on his holster. Without thinking, Noah yelled, "Hey, over here!" waving his arms wildly. It was reckless, maybe the most foolish thing he'd done. But it worked partly. The bear's focus split between the ranger and Noah, giving the man time to retreat inside. But now her gaze locked on Noah and Scout, exposed at the forest's edge. For a heart-stopping moment, she seemed poised to charge. Then a deafening crack split the air, a warning shot fired skyward by the ranger. The noise startled the bear, shifting her calculus of risk. With a huffing call to her cubs, the mother bear led them swiftly into the forest beyond the clearing. Safe inside the outpost, Noah sat wrapped in a wool blanket, a mug of hot cocoa warming his hands. Scout lay beside him on a folded sleeping bag, his injured leg properly cleaned and bandaged, contentedly chewing a strip of jerky Ranger Tom provided. "You took a hell of a risk, kid," Tom said, settling across from Noah. "Could have gotten yourself killed." "You were about to shoot her," Noah replied softly. "I couldn't let that happen." Tom studied him for a long moment. "Maybe, But I'd have tried a warning shot first anyway, he said, shaking his head with reluctant respect. Not many grown men would step between a grizzly and her target, let alone a boy your age. Noah sipped his cocoa, unsure how to respond. He didn't fully know why he'd acted. Instinct, not choice, driven by a need to prevent more loss, human or bear. I radioed the Valley Station, Tom continued. A team's heading up tomorrow to get you down safely. He paused, his face softening. I'm real sorry about your parents and the hamlet. We heard about the avalanche, but storms blocked rescue efforts. Noah nodded, a lump in his throat. Telling Tom his story, who he was, why he was alone, made the loss raw again, piercing the survival haze. Is it true what you said? Noah asked, shifting the subject. About my Uncle Ben surviving? Tom nodded. Per my supervisor, 17 from Cresthaven made it. Benjamin Holtz among them, in Riverside, the valley town. A spark of hope flared in Noah's chest. Uncle Ben was alive. He wasn't entirely alone. What about the bears? Will they be okay? Tom's eyebrows lifted. You're worried about them after all this? Noah shrugged. They were just doing what bears do. It was their den first. Tom's face creased in a smile. That's a mighty grown-up view. He adjusted his radio. They'll be fine. That area is a preserve. We'll mark the lodge as an active den, warn hikers to steer clear. She was just protecting her family, like you said. Outside, the winter sun set, casting long shadows. Somewhere in the forest, the bear family sought new shelter, their path parting from Noah's for good. Get some rest, Tom said, checking the stove. You've been through hell. Noah nodded, bone-deep exhaustion hitting now that he had a full stomach, warm clothes, and the promise of seeing Uncle Ben tomorrow. As he drifted toward sleep, Scout's warmth beside him, Noah thought not of the danger, but of Caleb's words. The Highlands teach the biggest lessons to those who listen. He wondered what the mother bear learned about humans. He hoped it wasn't all bad. A small wooden bear rested in Noah's palm, its simple yet vivid features carved with skill. A mother bear shielding two cubs, like the family he'd faced. It's a reminder, Tom said, handing it to Noah on their last morning at the outpost, of what you survived, but also of respect. That bear was protecting her family, just like you were yours. Noah nodded, tucking the carving into his new jacket's pocket, one of many supplies the rescue team brought. After 3 days at the outpost, waiting for clear weather, they were heading to the valley where Uncle Ben waited. The team arrived as promised, with medical supplies, fresh clothes, and news from beyond the Highlands. The avalanche that wiped out Cresthaven was one of several triggered by erratic weather, the rescue team explained. Climate shifts were making the Highlands unpredictable, old knowledge less certain. Ready, buddy? Noah asked, crouching to ruffle Scout's fur. The dog's leg was healing well, wrapped in proper bandages with antibiotics, though the bear's claw would leave a lifelong scar, a match for the memories etched in Noah's mind. The journey down from the outpost was a stark contrast to their desperate climb. They traveled in a group of 4, Noah, Scout, Ranger Tom, and a medic Sarah. They followed clear trails, pausing for rest and food. No need to battle deep snow or sleep under rocks. As they descended, the landscape softened. Snow gave way to bare ground. Stark pines mixed with aspens and softer firs. The air grew gentler, less harsh. Your uncle's been calling about you daily on the radio, Tom said during a lunch stop by a waterfall. Man was frantic when he heard you were alive. Already got a room ready for you. Noah nodded, emotions swirling. Relief at not being alone. Gratitude for Uncle Ben's care, but also the sharp grief that surfaced unexpectedly, the reality that his parents would never be part of this new life. Do you think the bear family found a new den? He asked, sidestepping his feelings. Tom smiled, catching the shift but letting it pass. Bears are tough. She'll have backup dens. Probably moved the cubs by now. By late afternoon, they rounded a trail bend, and the valley spread out below, a patchwork of fields and woods with Riverside nestled against a gleaming river. It was nothing like Cresthaven, with more buildings, more people, less wild. Noah's future lay before him. Your uncle's place is on the edge, Tom said, pointing to homes near the forest. Plenty of trees for you and Scout to roam. The mention of exploration stirred something in Noah. Not quite excitement, but its possibility. The Highlands had taken much, but they'd given too. Confidence, resilience, proof he could face brutal trials and live. Caleb's words echoed. The Highlands don't care if you're tired, scared, or lost, so you'd better know how to handle yourself. Noah had, and more. As they neared the valley, Tom spoke again. Your story, surviving alone, facing those bears, it's got folks talking. Park Service is calling you a true mountain kid. Noah shrugged, uneasy with the spotlight. I just did what my dad taught me. That's the thing, Tom said. Those lessons kept you alive. He gestured to the peaks behind, already seeming distant. We're short on folks who know the old ways, who can read the land and respect it while surviving it. When you're older, there could be a place for you with the Forest Service. The idea planted a seed, a fragile hint of purpose beyond survival. As they entered Riverside, Noah saw a man pacing by the ranger station, tall like Caleb, with broad shoulders and dark hair, streaked with gray. Uncle Ben. He looked up, saw them, and broke into a run. Noah braced himself, Scout at his side, ready for what came next. Behind them, the Highlands stood silent, bearing witness to all they'd endured and all that lay ahead. The wooden bear carving rested in his pocket, a reminder of danger and respect, loss and survival, endings and new beginnings.